if we look at Indian democracy from 1952 onwards, our general elections, almost in every election, there used to be one big idea whose face could be a leader, which used to dominate and influence the outcome of the election. We saw the elections in the Nehruvian era, post Panditji when Mrs. Gandhi was the Prime Minister, her defeat when the idea of democracy being in danger took over in 1977. She wrote back on the governance slogan thereafter. Rajiv Gandhi lost on the corruption issue to VP Singh in 89. And then something suddenly changed in India. We started getting fractured mandates. Even 89 was a reasonably fractured mandate. And except for the election in 1999, which was substantially influenced by the then political environment and Mr. Vajpayee's personality, we've had fractured mandates and not one real issue influencing the elections. What was more important, particularly in the post-1991 elections, that caste and identity politics played an important role. And several states in North India, UP, Bihar, are the obvious examples. It got influenced by these so-called caste or social factors, and parties which benefited from those factors certainly did not have the best track record as far as governance was concerned. There was a certain social sanction that those parties had, and elections were certainly impacted by the identity of the party or the leader itself. There was a second subtle change. The principal party at the center was the Congress. We always commented about them that it was increasingly tending to become a crowd around a family rather than a coherent ideological party. But then the demonstration effect of that phenomena was seen in party after party. So if you look down from Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Haryana, UP, Bihar, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, identifying a party with a family and the charisma of that family. And out of that was born the charisma of a particular representative of that family who identified himself with a caste or a community, which on account of social combinations dominated around them. And irrespective of who dominated the national polity, these groups would dominate the regional politics. And that is why the national party which dominated could cobble up an alliance, but we had actually thought that the era of very tall leaders and tall majorities in New Delhi was over. And this was a comment which we frequently did make. In a run-up to 2014, about 2 years or so before that, some of us started realizing that this phenomena is changing. In fact, Mr. Modi used to very subtly at times comment that what I'm seeing happening on the ground chemistry, the political pundits in New Delhi may get it all wrong. I had repeated a comment ad nauseum that this election is no longer about arithmetic. Now it's about the changing chemistry in India. Now, not many would understand the overtones of this comment, but then there had to be some reason why in a state like Kerala or Tamil Nadu or West Bengal or even Tripura, where the BJP was a relatively marginal party, it was still huge mammoth crowds that would come and listen to Mr. Modi. And I think the results did demonstrate a few very interesting points, and that's the changing character of India. In general terms, when we discuss economy, we can say this is aspirational and so on. Most of these parties which relied on their social basis or caste basis, as a rule, did badly. Those factors did not work. Almost all parties which relied on charisma of families, by and large, did badly. I hardly find an exception to this principle. Maybe India was getting to realize, but for the real worth of democracy to be felt in India, it is probably necessary that this myth that only dynasties can produce charisma had to be demolished. Were we moving towards meritocracy rather than dynasty. And out of these two factors was born this great aspirational desire in India. And the aspirational desire was, after a long time we saw an election in India where the dominant issues were governance issues. There were issues relating to corruption, issues relating to probity, issues relating to the economy or the management of the economy or its mismanagement earlier. And third most important, there were issues relating to the quality of leadership. India suffered for a decade amongst various factors, and which I strongly believe in, that India cannot afford to have a non-politician as a Prime Minister. A Prime Minister has to be a decisive leader. He's not going to be eventually judged by how many years he stayed in office. He's going to be judged by the footprints he leaves behind. And therefore, a desire to be in office in order to find a place in history is not merely enough. And therefore, there are occasions where a prime ministerial authority is felt. He's the ultimate repository of both responsibility and accountability. And therefore, he has to have the last word. And having the last word, he has to have the authority to overrule. And I think India has to respond, and that's the main challenge before the new government, to these changing trends which have been thrown up and the aspirations which these changing trends throw up. How do you then respond to abuse of discretions, serious allegations of misdemeanors by those in political authority, nepotism in the matter of allocation of natural resources, inability to decide how natural resources are to be allocated for the larger benefit of the economy? I think the last government had a great opportunity when the issue came to the center stage. And therefore, when the issue came to the center stage, they had a responsibility to address the issue and find a solution. It was not a very difficult solution. But then if you were scared as to what happens to a coalition, what happens to an alliance, then obviously you'll not be able to decide independently. We decided the issue of gas prices. It hasn't caused ripples in the society. And this was being addressed as one of the great challenges before the new government. We went about it in a fair and a logical way. We decided to decontrol the prices of diesel. It made news for only one day. We found a solution to the coal allocation problem which has paralyzed the power sector in India from 2007 to 2014. We created a competition to the large public sector monolith, both by public sector generating and user companies, by private sector user companies, and then if necessary by commercial mining. Surgically, we did it by bringing an ordinance. There has been a broad acceptability of that formula that we had. We are now giving finishing touches to following the same principle to the rest of the mining law. And I think this has laid the footprints as to how other natural resources are going to be best utilized. So you eliminate discretions, you follow the e-auction route, and you address the issue of corruption. We've seen the challenges before the economy. So a reasonable and a rational tax policy, it can't be ultra-aggressive with the taxpayers. We follow the principle that those who have to pay tax must pay tax. And those who don't have to pay tax can't be harassed for non-payment of that tax. And slowly, step by step, we are moving in that direction. We've realized that one of the greatest challenges we have is the manufacturing sector. The economy had touched a new low, and therefore the manufacturing sector itself is very delicately poised in India. We have to eventually try and make India the hub of low-cost manufacturing, for which various very challenging reforms will be required. So we've given a direction to our fiscal policy where the discounts are and the concessions are to be given, where tax sacrifices are to be made, where investment allowances have to be encouraged, where the SMEs have to be encouraged, those sectors which have been taken up for special focus. My additional responsibility, which was temporary, the defense, when I look back, even 5 months was a reasonable period to start a new thinking process that we can't be an importer all our lives. And therefore, the last government spent 10 years debating whether foreign direct investment in defense production must be increased or not. I announced it in one go. It's been by and large widely welcome. I now keep reading about the various kinds of joint ventures Indian companies are entering into. And if we follow this direction, defense production in India, both by the private sector and the public sector companies, we may be opening up a completely new area of opportunity. Procurement had been paralyzed. We've expedited the process. We've balanced the relationship between the services and the civilian government. And one by one, you resolve a large number of pending issues. We followed a policy that we are not a high-tax government. So even to the middle-class consumer, we gave concessions. We've set apart the idea of smart cities. Of course, that will have to overcome the obstacles which the land law in India brings up, and therefore some changes may be necessary. We'll first attempt to reach a consensus. If that's not possible, we'll go ahead and take the decision. We've opened up investments in various sectors. I do hope this session I'll be able to pass the insurance bill. The Prime Minister has been trying to provide a new category of leadership to the railways itself. He has very ambitious ideas about it. We've opened up railways for investment. Real estate norms have been liberalized. I hope in the next couple of days our disinvestment program is going to unfold itself. Transparency in the banking system and fiscal prudence by the bankers itself. We are also trying to bring down the governmental equity in the banks to about 52%, so that a large amount of capital, almost closing to 3 lakh crores, can be introduced in the banks itself, so they have a lot more resources for financial inclusions. I am in the last stage of my discussion with the states on the eve of Parliament session before introducing the amendments to the GST law in Parliament. And I do hope that my friends in the opposition parties, particularly the principal opposition, after a wasted opportunity when they were in government, spend a more fruitful tenure when they are in opposition. So they realize the merits of some of these actions and have a positive attitude towards them. I've always believed that some reforms, many reforms, are easily possible. Some are possible with a consensus, and others are more challenging. And therefore, I've clearly prioritized most of them as far as my own mind is concerned. And I think for the next few months, we have our plate reasonably full. For this, we need peace at our borders. And our first priority will be the best relationship as far as our neighbors are concerned. We need peace within so that insurgency can be curtailed. And therefore, the best of the Indian potential itself can be realized. And if we can do that, at a stage where a large number of countries in the world, the growth and large regions' growth is going to slow down, I do hope that with an aggressive set of reforms, India can provide to the world a new leadership and direction in this matter. Well, thank you very much for having invited me. And I do hope the world from whose radar India had fallen off and which has started looking back at India, now looks very positively at India as an ideal investment destination. Thank you.
There is flooding in the engine room compartment and the aft steering position due to ingress of water, which probably